Hello, everyone and anyone who's tuning in for the first time. Why would anybody click on a title that says Potato Land 27 or whatever? But here we are. Howdy, or welcome back. Thanks for tuning in, and what have you and whatnot. Today's episode we are doing sober, just because I think I've been relying too much on, and I'm not going for the notes this time. In fact, let me close my notes. Because I've been, speaking of relying on things too much, I feel like I've been relying on my notes a little too heavily as well. And they're not necessarily doing me any favors. Last week was kind of a big episode in terms of heavy topics, you know, one after the other. And I'm not sure how much that serves my overall image of my, whatever you call this, Vlogcast. Excuse me for the terrible joke right off the top there. Things that I would like to talk about. How are we doing? How's everybody? I hope you're doing well. And I'm doing all right myself in terms of not taking too much drugs, that is, and working this week. So I hope everybody is doing equally as good, if not better, as always. Now, to try and get into something, I would want this show to be somewhat short, but off the cuff and fun, rather than last week. You kind of can't shake off the, lingering feelings I had from releasing that show. So if you haven't seen it, don't check it out, actually, would be some good advice. But anyway, thanks for coming. Thanks for tuning in. And what do we do? How do we start off? I don't really have any segments. I feel like except for what is basic, normal conversation, I feel like we've run the course with all of our segments, trying to keep my chin down this week. If you don't notice that my body language is somewhat stiff at the moment. Speaking of habits, if I'm not doing one, then I'm doing another, and that might be both of us. So mind me if I don't disclose what else I've moved into. But it isn't sort of gateway moving into bigger things. It isn't necessarily in that direction. Just trying to not talk about the chub on my cheeks, really. What is going on? A little bit of a long day, so I might be out of most of my brain cells. But here we are, just to click on the record and see what happens. How about a moment of awkward silence while I take a puff of this cigarette? And I'm only one cigarette in, so not much in terms of extra boost of energy there, if you will. Well, I suppose we could talk about, I lost a subscriber. I'm not sure how much that really affects I can shake that off after figuring it out. It'll only take about an hour or so. And, but I do feel like maybe last podcast had something to do with it. So maybe not. It doesn't matter. The point is that if I title this release this week in the same vein as most of my titles, already trying to use big words, and more than likely that's not the right term to use, right? So if I am using very similar titles as most of my titles on these shows, then I just want the thing to be, you know, clickbait light, if possible. What else? What else is going on? Got into a little bit of gadgetry this week. I don't know how much do we care about talking about things like that, but you have a massage chair and one of the motors gets loud, replace it. Figure it out. YouTube is a great reason for something like that. I would sort of want to touch up on YouTube killing independent media, and that is journalism, but we're definitely not going to do more than one sentence of that. What else? Been making music, plan on changing up the intro music sometime in the near future somewhat. We'll see what happens there, but I feel like I have a finished song in terms of the music thus far, so that'd be nice. You don't have to check it out. I'll force it down your ears come time. Let us talk about other things that might be entertaining. What else? We pretty much covered everything in every other podcast. Don't feel like I have to talk about anything else. Completely ran out of topics. No, how about we do this? Let's open my notes back up, okay? Or I can try and remember them. I suppose we'll multitask. I'll do both. Let's see. Maybe I should have done some drugs. That's not on there. Maybe I'll pull some out right now. How about that? Yeah, I can't handle myself right now. So it's time. You get to witness where I store them, what else is in my freezer. Trying to release myself from this leash I'm on, at least a little bit. And here we are. Don't look at the brand name. Hide that from you if possible, in case we're still guessing my choice of lightweight whiskey that I buy. Well, I guess you're going to see it no matter what. So here we go. Thanks for hanging with us. I'm trying to get on a roll in terms of just keeping that mouth moving. If I were to walk up to anyone and talk to them right now, I would say I suppose we could talk about that if it was the opposite gender. So we could start with my love life a little bit. I feel like my love life is in shambles right now. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Don't let me show you too many products which aren't sponsored. But yeah, you know what I was thinking I could do? Speaking of last episode, and I haven't really looked at my notes here. I told you guys I was going to probably start. This is me talking to people that watch this, but also me talking to myself. You'll understand what I mean. I should probably... I just saw an error message or whatever that says my disk is almost full. So we'll see how long this records for. Doing good so far, Mr. Young. Doing great. I told you guys / myself, I should probably start just reading my stand-up comedy that I've written out loud to the camera at some point, especially if I'm going to go off on the community like I did. And the thing with that is I don't really have disposable material. I'm just starting, so I could use everything. But I can certainly come up with jokes in the moment, and I sort of kind of do. Another great example of not doing that would be last episode. But today I came up with a joke about Yellowstone, and boy, I really don't feel like sharing this with anybody. It's certainly not that entertaining. I asked the guy if he saw any bears, and he responded like, actually I did. How dare you ask, sort of a thing. And I said, good, because that was the only question I had. If I'm asking about this national park, I don't even know where Yellowstone is. He kind of told me that, so I'm a little bit cheating in the conversation. Probably shouldn't be so brave with my questions. But he happened to have seen one, and he made the scene look really exciting and all that. And then I said, well, then the only other question I would have about that is, are the rocks more, here I go fumbling it, are the rocks a little more yellow than in most places? Or the percentage of rocks are more... And so there you have it. I do try and come up with comedy on a daily basis, though. Or more like just a way of navigating out of a tight conversation, really. And that's sort of my theory about comedy in general, is if you think you're funny, well, you've probably been put to the test more than a couple times at an early age, which is, I don't think it's going out on a limb saying that that's everybody, right? So if you're picking up any of my jokes or humor, then that's just because I've had to practice it during my life. It's just really it's sort of like a workout routine you do every day. I apologize for not having all the brain cells this time, but and more than that, to expand on it, if you'll allow me, I think everything is inclined to head towards irony if you let it, if you can't help it. I don't know how much I want to elaborate on that. It sounds goofy, but I'll give you an example. I said hex today. Speaking of trying to use smart terms as a segment, and I'm not so sure I used it in the proper context, but I knocked on some wood and I said, I don't want to put a hex on it, but I think I was saying something nice about something I had in my possession or something. And that's what I mean is the jinx game, where you have to say something like 1, 2, 3, jinx war, you owe me a soda or something like that. That one just means that if you leave it up to the universe, everything's headed towards its original base of irony. Does that explain it clearly enough? I don't know. I don't know if that's everything, but it's certainly the jinx game. And it seems like I have to constantly keep my subconscious, in check all the time, because it's just too much fun to have twists and turns in life, as well as, what you see when you're watching shows and stuff like that. Certainly haven't planned a twist for this one, but it would be cool if it got entertaining all of a sudden. Let's try and down some more of this like a man. I know it's basically sugar water, but... So... I thought about wearing a more professional shirt. Oh, but then here I am. We could still play the game of me trying not to sweat even though this episode would be a good reason to be nervous, why not show you my underarms if you wouldn't mind the sight. I'm not sure what's under there, so hopefully it doesn't look too terrible, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some moisture. If there is, there's not much. Kept the shirt on for such reasons, and you know what? I'm cheating. I should have mentioned this before we got into it, but I turned the fan on high again this week for the second time. So, and then you could also see my elbows are sticking out, and that's for trying to come up with big words after a long day of work. That's for meteorological reasons. I tried. Would sort of love to get out of here sooner rather than later. On this one, you could see me hurrying towards my next smoke here. Back to pickup lines, or however you say, pick up a conversation lines. I've come up with many a few, and if I wanted to share a joke with you, I could at least share some fun pickup lines, or one. I can't remember two right now, so it could at least be one. And that is, we've covered it before, many an episode ago. That is sort of the reason why I release these things on a Friday evening. It's just so if you want, you could tune in, we could chill, I could be your first pre-party, and if I have to, I'll put in a pickup line every single episode. We can create a new segment. That's a lot of pressure. I don't want to stamp that down as a segment just yet, but I can certainly share one, I suppose, and then, I don't know, we'll see what happens, right? The line goes something like, is that your usual day of the week outfit? Or is today laundry day? You could say that to boys or girls, so pick up the conversation line. Is it funny? There's humor in there. What else? Well, sort of coming up with new segments, right? As we go here. Let's see. Managing my schedule. Hope you're managing yours. The trick is to try and be good. See, if I were to continue my conversation, if somebody on the other end of that opening line or whatever had something to say, or at least responded and didn't add anything, then I would continue to try and break down or point out, move aside all the obvious stuff in a fun, how do you say, in as fun as possible way. And so it depends on the scenario, but here I am at I'm on my own vliggity vlog thing, and not doing so hot this week. What can we say? At this point, I've had enough toxins. I should be loose and relaxed. What else? Is there anything in the news I could talk about? And this is kind of me getting desperate here. Still without looking at my notes, but if I'm going to do an in the news segment this week, I think we should just chuck it. And I already tried to touch on it, and it doesn't feel right talking about none of that nonsense. But YouTube's CEO making a public presence and being more out in the public eye is exciting. She's a female. Shouldn't be too much of a surprise, right? Maybe there's some humor in there. Cheeky grin. That's a good example of a cheeky grin. Let's go to the notes. Why not? I told you guys about my nervousness after releasing that episode, but I think I've been getting a little less nervous about these, all my opinions and stuff being out there, so that's a good thing. We didn't talk a lot about the title of last week's episode, but it doesn't matter. I didn't want to. And that's all I have. I don't know. But it would be smart if I didn't write notes, and I did a few of these in a row, where it was just me shooting the shit, gabbing, so that I can get back into the spirit of this thing, which is essentially something like 25% vlog, 75% entertainment. I think we can shake on that. No? What else is going on? Does your love life really need to be, or even your friend circle really need to exist in the first place anyway? We're still going through this. Very difficult to mingle if you're going to go out there by yourself. So, I'm not sure I really feel vulnerable sharing that. Would love to talk to family. Sort of missing out on that. Hope you guys are talking to your family and stuff. Okay, I don't know. Just fortunate to have you guys with me, and excited that you might know that I felt the douchebag vibe myself from last week, standing on my soapbox and yelling to the clouds like I did. So this one was just going to be fun, and we weren't really going to necessarily talk about much, but we talked about some stuff. I wish I was a little more confident, had more energy. Not much to say about that, but we covered a couple of things, right? Yeah, I don't have much. How about next week I try and shove some new music down your ear? And, yeah, this one's going to be rough. I mean, if I'm not loose enough to just sit back and talk about nothing, I mean, tune out already. Unsubscribe. Another thing, losing one subscriber is like losing a limb right now. So, very brave of my stupid ass to be here in the moment, do a little bit of a nervous check. If my hand is shaking, then you know for sure. For those audio listeners, I shall show my hand to the camera. Okay, I guess that's gonna be it. You saw me drinking like a man this time, even though I fell short on a couple swigs. Just glad to be here, still be alive, still have my show up and going. At some point, we'll be running off solar power, and I'll be in a giant, maybe a place that I pay for one day, hopefully. And I come to the conclusion that if I'm about 400 episodes in, then maybe I'll switch to researching Spotify and putting this on audio as well. Spotify and whatever else, the Apple Podcasts, all those platforms. I talk about it too much. All right. And I didn't want to necessarily mention any of the do-it-yourself stuff I've been doing this week because I may or may not have already talked about that. Feel like I'm already getting a little careful about not talking about things twice. Last week, I believe I covered something. If I can remember, I'll say it, but I covered something as if it was the first time I was talking about it, and I believe I've talked about it before. Too many episodes for me to go back and try and find out if I've talked about something before. So now we're at that point where I have this incoming fear, for lack of a better word, where I all of a sudden am filtering my thoughts because I don't want to talk about something a second time. So maybe getting that out of the way helps, and maybe it could help get the ball rolling. Maybe I should have mentioned it sooner. But there you have it. Another podcast slash vlog slash show down the drain. Sorry if this wasn't a banger. I wish it was. I wish it was. Do I have any hidden talents, maybe? Maybe I can show you a tour of my studio because I'm doing so poorly here this week. Hidden talents. I can make my tongue go wide. I've never talked about that, right? So hopefully I haven't. So if I choose to do so, I can, hopefully I haven't talked about that because there are going to be people that watch every episode. At the risk of completely boring somebody, my tongue can go like this. I don't know. And that? I apologize if that was the second time I did that. Just grasping for straws here now. It's been fun. It has been. Even an awkward hang with a sort of, let's say, distant pal or something on FaceTime. Whether you got things to talk about necessarily, it can be enjoyable. So, I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. At this point, I feel like I'm just trying to chew up minutes and seconds. So, we'll get out of here. Speaking of the other bad habits I've been falling into. Alrighty, guys. I would love to let's just leave quickly here, and maybe we could talk about that before I go. A quick out, a casual goodbye, and even the word goodbye will strike a certain note inside everybody that you don't want to necessarily make them feel. So the ideal goodbye in my world is to not say nothing, just like very much like animals do. They part and they go their own way as if nothing happened. So the most casual goodbye, I think actually Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer, enunciating that nice and loud, actually talks about that. So the way he recommends you do with your pet when you leave for work that day is the way I think us animals should probably do it. There's the other option of leaving every interaction effusively is the term. And for the fear of having already talked about this, we'll just man, I really painted myself in a corner.